Know your purpose is a tragedy. It's a disaster. To live and not know what state of God you are, it's a disaster. To not know your purpose is a tragedy. It's a disaster. You may tomorrow be gone. Tomorrow may never come. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up to purposeful living now. That in this you will build your soul. In this you will be the difference. In this you will be the answer to the prayers of humanity. In this you will build your soul. In this you will be the difference. In this you will be the answer to the prayers of humanity. To live and not know what state of God you are, it's a disaster. To not know your purpose is a tragedy. It's a disaster. Sunshine, rainfall, half spins, the wind blows.
Another Saturday,
symphony, purpose.
the 22nd of May 2021.
Rainfall, half spins,
A little early start,
harmony, symphony.
but we're still here on Mentoring Hour.
World is waiting on you.
Certainly, the world is waiting on our awesome panel today.
The world is waiting on you.
Dr. Susan is around.
Shine, oh shine.
Anyway, that is Fafa with Purpose Song.
Oh,
Well, as the doctors will say, today we're going generic. That is to say, well, we need to talk a little bit about our health as well, isn't it?
You may tomorrow be gone. Tomorrow
Every now and then,
never come.
we need to make time for ourselves when it comes to our health. So today, we'll be here once again.
And this you will be the answer to the prayers of humanity.
To do just that.
Build your soul. And this will be the difference. And this you will
Today, Dr. Susan will do most of the job.
be humanity.
So without much ado, let's go to Dr. Susan, who will let us know exactly, in detail, what we are going to be talking about today, and then introduce Mr. Adam Mapeni. Yes, I think I got the name right, to the show this very morning. Good morning, Dr. Susan. I think you're on mute.
I'm mute, yeah. Good morning, everyone. And I'm very pleased to be here again. Can you hear me? Or
Yes. Yes, I can hear you. I hope Adam.
Okay, loud and clear.
Yes.
Yeah, so good morning to your listeners and your viewers. I'm very pleased to be here again, Saturday. And I'm really pleased to bring something different. So I just thought that today we will just focus on health. Yeah, just focus on a bit of health. And particularly in our community, diabetes is a huge problem. And evidence also shows that diabetes is actually higher in some of the Asian populations and also the Black population, particularly type 2 diabetes, because we've got type 1 diabetes that you are born with, and then you've got what we call maturity onset or type 2 diabetes, where you may not necessarily have it when you're a child, but it's something that you will develop. So with type 1 diabetes, your immune system attacks your cells, and so your cells will not produce enough insulin. Whereas with type 2 diabetes, the body just doesn't produce enough insulin, or the body cells will not react to the insulin. And sometimes lifestyle can also bring about some of these difficulties, particularly if you have a family history of diabetes. So we want to focus on type 2 diabetes today. And I have a guest who is not part of one to one, but he is an associate, and I really respect him. We both sharp. They say iron sharpeneth iron. So Mr. Adam Mapani is here, who I will leave him to introduce himself. And he, I will say, is actually the diabetes specialist. And he has a lot to say because he's very passionate about diabetes, about how we can prevent it, and particularly in our community. And he's specialist, particularly specialist in eyes. He works in one of the top eye units or trusts in the whole of the UK. So I'll leave Mr. Adam to introduce himself. But I'm very pleased to be here as usual.
All
Good
right.
morning.
Carry on, sir. I'm
Yeah,
just itching to hear you, so carry on.
sure, sure, sure.
Mhm.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Susan, for the warm introductions, and of course our host this morning and the rest of the viewers who are on air this morning. It's a pleasure to have been invited, and it's always a pleasure again to share, particularly under such times like this, sharing the experience, the knowledge, and the information in making things better. What we're going to be discussing this morning really is not anything new, really, but I think we'll be putting more emphasis on making some possible lifestyle adjustments in making things better, and also trying to give each other some tips and some guidance. And if there's any kind like help that you need to secure from the NHS, and how you can get the help. So my name is Adam Mapani. I'm a nurse consultant at Moorfields Eye Hospital in the Medical Retina Department. And I'm also a clinical teaching fellow at UCL, Department of Clinical Ophthalmology. I co-chair the Black Asian Minority Ethnic Group Vision here in the UK. And in medical retina, one of the diseases that we specialize with is diabetes. Why diabetes? Diabetes can affect the back of the eye, which is the line thinning behind the back of the eye. It's also important to kind of like, set the scene by looking at the extent of the problem that we are faced with. Diabetes mellitus is a disease. It's a major public health problem for most healthcare systems here in the UK and around the world. The NHS spends almost close to 10 billion fighting diabetes directly and indirect costs. So you can see there's a huge amount of investment towards either diagnosis of diabetes, treatment, management, and then if there's any complications, it's even make things worse. So it is a huge public health problem. The scale of the challenge is as follows. Approximately more than 4 million have got some form of diagnosis of diabetes in the UK. And very worrying, there's approximately 1 million people living with undiagnosed diabetes. So this is quite extremely worrying, because in the majority of the cases, these are the people, unfortunately, they would sin when there's a problem, either opportunistically when they see somebody, either they see Dr. Susan in your practice, or they see us in clinical practice without knowing that they've got diabetes. Then there's that kind of like diagnosis, and either it's too late, or somehow there are preventable complications. So that's kind of like a nice way to sort of set the scene in terms of why and the scale of the challenge.
It sounds You talk so smooth, but the things that you say are very, very scary, right? So you are like an angel giving us bad news, but whichever way, it's news that we need to work on. You spoke about 1 million or 1 billion people are living with undiagnosed diabetes. Is that what you said? Is it one
Yeah,
million?
1 million people
One,
in the
one,
UK.
in the UK?
Yes.
Wow. And of that number, how many are in the minority? I mean, the black and what have you? How many roughly?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, sir, and I'm glad it's coming from you because it is a worry. Why it's worrying is because there's variation in us attending clinic appointments from the Black, Asian minority ethnic groups. So now, if we go to the BME group, Black minority ethnic group, men in particular, African background, myself included, we are more likely to visit our barber than seeking help from our GP. It's quite unfortunate. And that annual MOT, it does help in just trying to understand what's going on with your body. So knowing your limits, knowing your numbers as in blood pressure, diabetes status, whether you have it or not, or knowing your cholesterol, those are some of the kind of like early indicators. And also there is a campaign on trying to see how risky you are. So the going back to your question now, I think there is quite a significant proportion of people from within our community who have undiagnosed diabetes. And we've also seen in the pandemic, as we progress from last year, that unfortunately, there are quite a number of people who unfortunately died, some of them with undiagnosed diabetes. So it is quite worrying. If diabetes is more likely to impact disproportionately on BME, and it's even more makes it more frightening if people are living with undiagnosed diabetes.
Well, uh,
Papa is very sorry, Papa.
okay.
Just to add to Adam, and perhaps maybe that's what you may be coming to it. The symptoms of diabetes is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Very important. I think when people think about diabetes, they think about the sort of traditional or the usual symptoms. So, but after all, I don't feel like peeing all the time and I don't feel like drinking all the time. So it's one of that, it's a very debilitating disease. It's a disease that affects every single organ in your body. It's a disease that can reduce your life expectancy and quality of life. So particularly if you have any relative in your family with diabetes, you have to be extra careful. And we're not talking about people who are born with it, because they've had it from childhood. We're not talking about type 1 diabetes. We are talking about type 2 that can be preventative. There are certain measures that can prevent type 2, particularly if you are genetically predisposed. So the first starting point is actually to find out from the family, and if it's just like blood pressure and all the other things that runs in the family. So if you have as anybody in the family, okay, with diabetes, then it's like what my colleague said, Mr. Adams said, that the issue with our community is that we are very reluctant to have those checks. I mean, how many times have we gone to have our eye check? So for even people like with a family history of glaucoma, my dad has a history of glaucoma. My family has a history of glaucoma. So my dad has always reminded me. So when you go to an optician, they are not just going to look in your eyes for glaucoma. They can look in your eyes, and if there are any signs of hypertension or what we call diabetic retinopathy, which is Adam's special interest area, they will pick it up. So the peeing and the drinking a lot of water, particularly at night, those are the ones we know. But how about losing weight when you're not really trying to lose weight? You see, because we are in the West, where being slim is supposed to be attractive, when people start losing weight without particularly putting a lot of effort into it, they are very proud of themselves. But it's not all losing weight that is good. In fact, losing weight with no reason for losing can even be underlying cancer. And I'm sure we'll be talking about cancer in one of our talks in the future. Okay. And then again, the other area that people need to look out for. If you have a sore, okay, you have an ulcer or a break in your skin, we call it a sore, that is not healing. You need to check it out. If it's not diabetes, it might even be, you have problems with your arteries. You may have problems with your veins in your feet because the blood flow to the feet and the extremities are not as good as your central. Okay, so if you have problems there with either a nerve or vessels, it will struggle to heal. And some of the root cause, if it's not cancer, again, could be diabetes. And diabetes is actually commoner than cancer. And people don't realize. I have people who have come to me, so I've had this sore for ages, and it's not healing. And I'm sure Adam has come across it. Because again, in Ghana, when you go to the diabetic clinic, the commonest thing that you see, okay, these are not people coming in with ketoacidosis because they have a lot of sugars in their blood and they've got a lot of acids in the blood. They come in with the problem with the issue with the healing and the feet. So you see, they line them up in the wheelchairs, amputations, because they've left it too long. Another thing to check also is when you have itchiness around your private parts, okay? Because we've got fungus that loves sugar. So for the women, you have what we call candida or fungal infections, thrush, which might be normal. People get it. It's very uncomfortable and may not be because it's diabetes. But if you keep on having these recurring, whether you're a man or a woman, and you seeming to have a lot of itchiness in those areas, and they keep recurring, it might be an indication to go and check. It's such a simple test. Simple test. The basic test is urine. And then the GPs can do a blood test. And honestly, there are people who have actually said that they have reversed their type 2 just by exercise and diet. So it's really silly, really, for something that, in your 40s or your 50s or your 30s, you can actually do something about to, one, prevent it. And then two, if you have it, you could theoretically reduce the risk and the effect. There's some evidence coming out now that people have said that they've actually reversed their type 2 diabetes, but that's not the subject of today's discussion, but it's just to encourage people who may have type 2 diabetes. And I know people who have it and they feel that, oh goodness, this is such a judgment on me, and I can't do anything about it. Something can actually happen when you do something actively about it. So I just thought I would add that and sort of direct the conversation, because I'm aware, Papa, that this is a bit more medical than our usual
That's right.
sort of coaching talking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I wanted us to start first of all with the causes of this type 2 diabetes. And then we will go to the symptoms, as you just rightfully came in with. Back in, within the minority groups, some people are saying it's the causes is usually the food that we eat, maybe too much carbohydrate, eating late in the night, among other things. So let's begin with from that angle, the causes of the type 2 diabetes. And then when we see the symptoms, then we can possibly go have a look at ourselves going forward. So I'll go back to you, Adam, on this one.
Yeah. So I think it's a very good question, because all types of diabetes, they have one in common. It's because you've got too much glucose or sugar in your blood, right? So when you have too much glucose in your blood, it's also important to say we all need some of the glucose, because we need it for energy. And where do we get our glucose? So we get our glucose as our bodies break down carbohydrates that we eat or drink. You already mentioned carbohydrates. And that glucose is released into our body. We also need a hormone called insulin, right? Insulin is made by our pancreas. And it's insulin that allows the glucose in our blood to enter into our cells and fuel our bodies, right? So for those without diabetes, the pancreas simply senses that glucose when it enters the bloodstream, and it releases the right amount of insulin, right? So it's well regulated, so the glucose can get into your cells. But then if you have diabetes, the system works differently. So this is where now we're now talking about insulin. Now, you said in our community about carbohydrates, right? Yes, there is that huge risk factor, because when these carbohydrates, when they're absorbed into the bloodstream, they then turn into sugar. Pizza, as a typical examples, you'll be shocked to know how many tablespoons of sugar is that equivalent, the size of 2 pizzas or so forth, when it's now broken down into sugar. So it is one of those risk factors, carbohydrates. And then fatty diet, oily, red meat and other things that we tend to also associate with our community now. It also puts someone on that significant risk factor. And Dr. Susan spoke about symptoms, right? And I've heard, especially men, kind of like having this sort of, you can say it's a kind of like a pub discussion or a football discussion when Arsenal is playing against Manchester, saying that of lately I'm going to the toilet a lot, especially at night. It's because I do drink a lot before I sleep. It's because last night I was having a cup of drinks. So I think that's why it might have caused that. Yet it could be an alarm bell to seek urgent help and see your general practitioner. So these kind of symptoms, right, whilst some of them are subtle, as Dr. Susan alluded to, but there is actually an opportunity to quickly jump on. And the luckiest thing about diabetes type 2 in particular, it can be prevented, it can be delayed, especially as we get into our 40s. So when you feel more tired, those are some of the early indications. And for something that is quite close to my subject area, blurred vision. Some people, they don't see their vision, right? And for people with diabetes, when the diagnosis is made, there's what we call retinal screening will come into it. So it's important to get your eyes checked. And when your eyes get checked, there could be some early sort of lesions or some changes behind the back of the eye that can help you to make certain lifestyle adjustments. So I think I leave it here for now, just in case Dr. Susan wants to chip in.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Adam. The thing about the diet, I don't think we should. I don't want us to give an impression that carbohydrate is a villain. It's not the villain. Carbohydrates and a balanced diet is what is needed. It's important. It's about what type of carbohydrates do we consume a lot of, because we've got very healthy carbohydrates. And when we come to the lifestyle, we can talk a bit more about that. But in terms of high fat and high carbohydrate diets or unhealthy diets, pizzas and all these huge load, it's not just the fact that somebody eats fufu all the time or somebody eats kenke all the time. It is how much kenke and how much meat and all the other stuff that comes with it, you know. So if somebody is saying blaming the fufu or blaming the yam, that's not fair. You know, how much of it are they consuming? And how much of the other fatty things, you know, the way we like pig feet and all those sorts of things. See? So what happens is that a lot of fat actually changes the blood metabolism. And what it does is that we've got an organ called the pancreas. You see, the pancreas is very clever. It will react to a lot of sugar. Yeah. But if we keep on spewing fat into the blood, very soon it starts affecting the metabolism in such a way, we call it insulin resistance, where the pancreas cannot react, you know, to do what it's supposed to do. The insulin that's supposed to, the pancreas are supposed to produce the insulin to reduce the sugar, it becomes overwhelmed. Yeah, because that fat is actually changing the metabolism of the blood. And that's why we end up getting type 2, the type of type 2 diabetes, because it's linked to health style. And then you may be sedentary. So you're not, you're not metabolizing or you're not breaking down the excess sugar that you've eaten. So you're taking a lot in, but you're not doing, 1 + 1 is equals to 2 now. You get what I mean? You put in, you take out. If you put in more, and then you take out, you spew out less, you put the weight on. It's so simple. Weight, there are people who exercise a lot. If you exercise a lot and you eat a lot, you only balance, you will not lose the weight. You see? But if you balance your food and you look at the amounts of the food you eat, you healthy eating, look at the calories, how much. If you eat 3,000 calories, you're gonna put on weight. And then you are not exercising. You're accumulating fat and sugar, fat and sugar. Before long, your pancreas is overwhelmed. They may be healthy and producing the insulin all right, just that they just cannot, it cannot react because there's other things, there are other metabolites, fat, molecules and all these things competing with the function of the insulin and the function of the pancreas. And that is why then we have this condition of type 2 diabetes, because now you end up having too much of the sugar coming up because your pancreas that you've been born with have been completely overwhelmed. It's saying, I'm tired. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired. And then we start seeing the complications of diabetes as one gets older. So if people are intentional, I'm a coach as well. I'm a level 8 accredited coach. And one of the things, I've got a Facebook group of nearly 500 women, and then I've got another coaching group as well, very bespoke coaching group. And one of the things that I do with that group, and I've had that group for quite a long time, nearly 7 years. And I have been really, especially when from 40 onwards, when your metabolism starts slowing down with women, menopause starts, begins to, because you can be 40 and menopause can be, sorry, menopause can be 10 years or 15 years, but your metabolism is being affected. Let me go and get a drink of water. I'll come back.
Sure. That is needful. All right. We're talking about type 2 diabetes. That is a kind of diabetes that can be reversed. And we have with us Adam and Dr. Susan, our usual panel. who's been so awesome today. Very very interesting. We're discussing this very salient topic that it touches my heart a lot. In that my mom had one, so I know it is very very important for us to discuss. And one thing that Adam said that rocked me so much is there are about 1 million people living with undiagnosed diabetes. That is quite scary. And it tells me there are so many people who are walking around who know more of their mobile phones than even they know themselves. And that is quite scary. You need to know more of you so that if there are anything that needs attention, you will be able to seek that attention as quick as possible. I'll hand over to Dr. Susan once again for her to carry on.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why I suddenly started coughing. Anyway, so basically what I'm saying is that the earlier one becomes intentional about the whole health, particularly when I would say really from 35 onwards, from 35 onwards, 40, and especially when you hit your 40, and even especially, I always say to people, if we look at our health, yeah, when you get out of your 30s, it isn't really all about the aesthetics anymore. It's really, forget about it. You can't compete with 20-year-olds. Once you hit 40, if you're a woman, you can't compete with your 20-something year old. That is how God has made it. That is how nature has made it. It's beautiful. We are different now. We are wiser. The attributes are different. You have experience, you have life, you have, you are more content financially, hopefully by God's grace. You see, 20-year-olds, early 30-year-olds, they concentrate on career, their image and everything. As you get older, the emphasis should shift to the health. Even if the aesthetics is part of it, that's fine. That's fine. Why not? Nobody wants to look bad when they get into from their 40s onwards. That is, I'm not saying that. But the emphasis, because if people think about why they want to do something, why do you want to look at your diet? Why do you want to exercise? If the shift of it is because I want to become thin like this model, 20-something-year-old model on the catwalk, that is when then you've set yourself to fail. Because it will be very hard unless you want to become very anorexic. It's hard. You have other things to do. You've got your children you've got your career. You are not a student or you're 20-something-year-old and you don't have anything to do. So it's difficult. But if the focus is that when I'm 60 and I'm 70, by God's grace, if God gives me health, if I get to that age, I want to enjoy all what I've worked for. I want to enjoy my children. I want to enjoy my children's children. I want to be healthy if God allows. You see, I always say that this body that God has given us, you see, who dwells in our body? Those of us who are Christians, we know who dwells in our body. We know who has made us what? Fearfully and wonderfully. So why will we not take care of this body? Because if we are healthy and we are alive, who are we going to bless? So when I'm doing the coaching, when I'm doing mind coaching, I try and shift people's minds and say to them, think about why you are doing what you are doing. You're not doing it because you want to walk on a catwalk. That is a bonus. That is a bonus. If you can fit in a size 16, a size 12, a size 10, it's a bonus because it's testament to the hard work. But think about the fact that you want to be like your mom who is healthy at 80, or your mom who is enjoying at 70, or your mom who, your dad who is even at 90, they are healthy. If we think that way, then we'll start taking care of our health. That's the way, so when I'm doing mind coaching, I always say to people, you have to first of all ask yourself why you want to. If you don't think about, if you are saying that you are living hand to mouth, you eat everything, tomorrow will die, that's fine. You are not the one I'm addressing. But if you want to be like, if you've got a healthy parent and you want to live like them, you see, you want to get to that point. If you also have a purpose that God has given you, and you want to be on this earth as long as it takes for that purposes by God's grace to be established. Yes, or if you have things to do, and it's not like you because you enjoy being on this world. This world, for example, we see all the things that are around us. So it's really not attractive with the pandemic. It really isn't. However, whether we like it or not, God has placed us on this earth. And God hasn't given us spiritual bodies. God gave us physical bodies. So without us worshiping the body, and I'm not saying that, it is just being a good custodian. And part of a good custodian is being intentional about what we put in our mouth. And part of a good custodian is getting out and being a bit active. That's all. We are not saying that go to gym for 12 hours. And diabetes is one of the things that does not like exercise. Mr. Adam will concur. If you are active, diabetes can actually melt. Diabetes can stay away. It does not like activity. You see, diet is fine, but one of the things that is, if you ask your GP, exercise, physical exercise, avoiding sedentary doesn't mean you go and do ham in the gym. Avoiding is that what you can walk. When you can take stairs, take. When you can cycle. When you can do garden. That's all being, how many steps they say we should do? Is it 10,000 steps if we can per day? How many of us, including you? I'm not saying that I'm perfect. Okay, I'm done speaking.
Now, I think we've dived into the lifestyle as well, one way or another. I know there are people who eat a little bit late in the night as well. Can you advise us on that as well a little bit? Eating late in the night, and then right after possibly go straight to sleep.
I'm just going to use this opportunity to just echo what Dr. Susan have just said. And I'm just going to drop some few nuggets here because she has ended the coaching mode in trying to raise lifestyle and its importance. So health is now the new wealth. Very important to make it clear. So when we talk about prosperity, it's linked to health and you cannot run away from it. And then there's something about the brain, the mind. You eat what your brain tells you to eat. It does all that. So that information, when you eat too much and how you can actually control it, there's something about the brain. Now, we make choices in life. And most of the choices, the decision that we make, the impact can be felt immediately. And some of the impact can be felt after 10 years, after 3 years, after 4 years. And so the choices that you make, the choices, if you choose to go for McDonald's at 10 p.m., as late as it is, it's a decision that you've made. And that decision is going to have an impact on your general well-being. So it's important, again, to sort of circle the choices and the impact it has. Now, going back again to sedentary lifestyle, getting to eating too much, I would want to give some practical life examples so that can encourage someone. Now, before COVID, we're talking of February 2020, I used to be overweight. And I think I've got evidence of this, and I cannot share the pictures, unfortunately. I used to weigh something like 96 kilos. And there's something that struck me last year, and I had to make a choice. I had to make a decision. And that decision partly was triggered by the pandemic because I tested positive at the beginning of March, end of March last year. And I had to make a decision to work on my lifestyle. I self-isolated for 7 days. April 2020, I started running seriously. I've been going to the gym, but kind of like getting into the bathroom without getting into the shower. So I used to go to the gym, I used to have a membership, but not doing the actual stuff. What I then found actually, the simple stuff of running, walking. So I started a little bit, would go for 3 kilometers, work on my distance, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers. And the impact of this, I started losing weight. And I would also bring in the idea of peer-to-peer encouragement. Partner with someone, you have a running buddy, someone who you can also kind of like hold into accountability, or they can also hold into accountability if you don't. So when you start getting this, the motivation is very important. Get that excitement even when it's running. So when I started doing all this in a nutshell, I lost quite a significant amount of weight, something like 10 kilos. And my average weight and what my BMI tells me, it's within that range. So I've sort of come out from the high risk category and kind of like normalize things. And what I learned from there was that it's possible, you can do it. You need the motivation, there has to be a will. And I think for me, there was also other push factors. And the impact that this has made now, I was quite lucky enough to have been approached by NHS England to become their ambassador. And my own picture is widely circulated in London, trying to raise awareness about diabetes prevention and delays in Black minority ethnic groups. And then lastly, when you achieve something, share with others. And so, I mean, it's kind of like in some WhatsApp groups where we do fitness, we give each other average sort of target 40 kilometers, 20 kilometers a week. Just before I came on the show, I've been to a 15-kilometer run, and it was raining. So to me, weather and all this, it doesn't really matter. I can run in the rains, I can run at night, because there's that motivation. So share the love, share the passion. It is possible. And then when you exercise, what we know, and I think there's enough evidence to support this, you make your lungs stronger. And COVID is a disease of the lung. So you lower again your significant risk of things like COVID. So very important, the benefits of exercising and how you can also get started, get that motivation, get a running pad, share the news. You've got the statement was made about spending so much time on smartphones. Turn that into physical activity, turn into counting your steps, lifestyle, share that on social media, do something differently in such times like this.
Thank you very much. I know of a wise man by name, Brother Ishmael Tete. He will tell you wealth without health is equal to inheritance, right? So you may have all the wealth, the money, but without health, it is just going to end up as inheritance, and it's going to be a very quick one as well. Now, let's use the next 15 minutes that we have left to advise ourselves on the particular lifestyle. I want us to focus more on our dieting area, because uh, Africans, when we go for our parties, we don't play with our food. Some will take some, they will eat some there and then package some home. When they get home in the night, they will eat before possibly jumping straight on to bed. And when you were talking about the carbohydrates that we eat, and then it's converted into sugar in our bodies and what have you. So if you eat the carbohydrate, if you eat late in the night and then you don't exercise, or you don't walk, or you burn out the carbohydrates, what happens to the sugar and what have you? Just advise us on those areas. Give it to us like you are selling insurance to us. Give it to us plain in
Okay.
plain language, so that we'll take practical
Okay.
steps to helping ourselves.
Yeah. So it's a very, very good question, and I'm aware that today we have to bring it to an end. That's why we because of a few commitments, and that's why we started early. So a real apologies to those who were not aware. So I think the last 10, 15 minutes, we will use this to provide the strategies that people can start thinking about and using it. I will call it food mindfulness. Okay, food mindfulness. And I'm not going to dictate what people should do in their homes. It's very difficult to break habits. When you have habits, it's really, really difficult. So it's really about consistency. If you feel that your lifestyle is such that, we have to be realistic here. There are people who work on shifts and they come back and they have to eat late at night. I'm a doctor myself, even though I don't work shifts. I do some work that I cannot always say that by 7 p.m. I finished eating. I will try, but sometimes I'll eat later. My husband always tells me off about that. But then I'm mindful about what happens the next day. I don't sit down and have this huge chunky breakfast to fill me when I know that I've had something not too long before bed. First of all, I'll try and sit up because I will get reflux. I don't know how people can eat and then go to sleep. Everybody is different. Thank God for that. But I know that even when I've eaten late, because I cannot help eating late, I sit up for some time. Otherwise I get the reflux and it's very uncomfortable sleeping. But then the next day, I'm mindful also. So this is where you think about your breakfast. And then this is where you think about your exercise. We have to try and be active every day. Active. And when I say active, I'm not saying that go to the gym. Just your 10,000 steps a day. That's all it takes. You see? And that will burn off that late night. The question about carbohydrates, they haven't said that carbohydrates are bad. They're only saying that we should be mindful about what carbohydrates can do, in the fact that carbohydrates can spike your sugars, particularly what we call low glycemic foods. So those are the white starchy rice. You've got rice, you've got white rice, you've got brown rice. Brown rice will have a high glycemic index, in that it will not raise your sugar to that high level and quickly compared to white rice. White bread, white rice, white potatoes, lovely, delicious, but it gives you a spike and then it gives you a peak and trough. So you goes up and then suddenly you crash and you want to eat again. It's just like chocolate, sweets, all those things. Yeah. It will give you your energy, your quick burst of energy, but you find out that it comes back again and then you keep adding on it. Whereas foods or carbohydrates with a high glycemic index, and I'm calling it this way so that people can then go and research about these foods, that they tend to be very healthy carbohydrates. So like your brown pastas, your whole wheat that my community, we don't like to eat. I mean, brown bread, goodness, when you say brown bread, somebody's going to get out of here. But these are carbohydrates that are healthier. That's all, you see. And it's about researching some of these carbohydrates. If people want to eat carbohydrates, and it is recommended that we don't cut out food groups anyway. It's about eating it in proportion, learning the food. Look, 20-something years ago, I went from, when I had my first child, I went from a size 6 to a size 16 in 9 months. Within that year, I'd come back to my weight. I'm 50-something years old. I've had 2 children, and I'm still a size 8, size 10. You see? And it isn't about the sizes. I made that decision after my first shock. I never realized I had it in me to put on that much weight, because I'd always been skinny until I had my first child, and I realized that I had the potential. My African genes were really real. And from that time, I've always studied it. It's been a little bit up and down. If I'm even having variation, like the pandemic that everybody has put on weight, okay, it's never huge to the extent that I can't fit in my clothes. And it's just a bit of adjustments, because pandemic, your exercises, everything goes, the way you've done things changes. So it's about adjustments, and adjustments take some time. And I don't beat myself about that. But I can say, hand on my heart, by God's grace, that since that first shock, I started learning and studying, one, about my body, about how I think about food, about my relationship with food. And then I started readjusting my mindset to look at my mom and say to myself, I want to be like my mom by God's grace at 80 and having a time of her life by God's grace, because she has been very intentional about her health. She just didn't sit there and magically it happened. She did something proactive about it. So in my early 30s, after I had my children, I made that decision. And like what Mr. Adam has said, I like to help people. So I've also set up the Facebook groups. So for anybody who is interested, I'm doing my first ever master class. My first ever master class. And that is the second Saturday, third Sunday in July. I'll let you know, Papa Smiley. So if anybody is interested, this is a 1.5 master class. And this is where then I've got my coaching hat. And this is the 20 years lesson. I'm going to be providing the keys that I have learned over 20 years with regards to just maintaining your weight, and then obviously the health aspect of why it's so important and what you can do as an African person. Normally I engage with women, but if there's any man listening who is interested, you can come along. If you don't want people to see your face, you can always put your video off and just listen in the background. And perhaps even other than I might also do some of these coaching, because we are going to be working as coaches together on certain projects. But definitely I'm a proactive person. So second Sunday in July, I'll be doing a masterclass on 20 years lessons learned with regards to this whole why it's not necessary it's important to take care of your health and your weight after 40 years old. So if there's any interest, Papa, let me know, and then we can send the necessary links to them. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Susan. Adam, your final advice to us as well. Mm-hmm. Something
Okay.
small for us. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Papa Smiley, and thank you, Dr. Susan. I think very nicely, beautifully articulated. I'm just going to briefly sort of add some other hints. Your plate. So we talk about modulation, knowing exactly how much is this, your calories, and so forth. And the practicalities of life is we are very busy people. These are very high pressured environment. What I would say, have a meal planner. A meal planner can possibly help with eating habits, and also try to come up with some creativity about your plate. Have a fair distribution of vegetables, those healthy carbohydrates, brown rice, brown bread, and also ensuring that you have a balance of each end of a different, food nutritional values. And we see the significant benefits of vegetables. We see the significant benefits of eating fish. We also see the significant benefits of also eating carbs, provided you are also able to control having the right amount of carbs. I love Ghanaian people, and they're so close to me because last week I was actually giving a television interview to one of the Ghana television stations, and I'm quite thrilled about this. So with my friends, we kind of like mix. We have fufu, kenke, and all this. It's right, have it, but also just know how then you can sort of control it. And another thing, lastly, which I would also say, which I help, is we cannot deny the fact that there are costs that comes with lifestyle adjustments, right? Fizzy drink, carbonated soft drinks, sugary drinks, all this, and so forth. When you go for your shopping, right, kind of like control your shopping list, know your habits, and the vicious market out there in terms of branding, they know the things that you normally buy because you use Club Card, you use all this, so they trap you. They know buy or this one for free, because that's all kind of like the information that they have with AI capabilities. So if you spend quite a bit on vegetables, health of this, they can also like keep a track on that. And then you'll not be tempted that if you're walking into a supermarket, you go according to offers, that kind of thing. And some of them are quite unnecessary to be on your shopping list. And these are kind of like the unhealth stuff. I'll be more now specific on the eye care, and I'm quite conscious of time and how we can sort of help each other, because we cannot conclude this without talking about eyes. So if you then happen to be diagnosed with diabetes, right, you have, according to the National Service Framework, an opportunity to attend retinal screening. So there's a diabetic register. Your GP should offer you retinal screening at least once a year. The whole thing about retinal screening, it's a social mode of care, community-based, local to where you live. You must ensure you get your eyes screened as a primary prevention for things from getting worse. So retinal screening does help to identify sight-threatening diseases very early, and meaningfully, you can come up with some lifestyle interventions. So if you miss retinal screening, you put yourself at significant risk, because you never know exactly what's happening behind the back of the eye. So the retina, which is the back of the eye, is important for your central vision, driving vision, and so forth. We have in our community bus drivers, lovely bus drivers, and those cab drivers, taxis, and you earn so much, I mean, you depend so much on your sight as part of your occupation. Ensure you get your eyes checked. Ensure you see somebody at least once a year. What we often find out at a later stage, we then see people having developed complications which could have been prevented in the first place. And the sort of treatment sometimes we have as an option, they are quite intensive. It could be involving monthly visits to the eye clinic department. Now, going back to that working lifestyle, it's a lot to cope with, and it's a lot to catch up with. And diabetes is a multi-system disease, so you have several other appointments. So it is important to get your eyes checked. If you then happen to be referred to an eye clinic, please don't miss your appointment. Don't miss your appointment. There's a lot of excellent treatment pathways. There's been a significant amount of improvement because of research. There's intravitreal injection that can reverse the disease, your visual gain, and so forth. There is laser treatment that can help you to restore sight. There's a lot of clinical research backed by evidence where people can actually go from sort of borderline sort of blindness into significant sight gain. And this can significantly improve what we call quality of adjusted life years. So don't miss eye clinic appointments. And then the last thing as well, in our community, is part of, again, encouraging each other on prevention. If there's any clinical trial that is out there, I know there's all sorts of misgiving, hesitance, and reluctance. Some of the clinical trials, right, can also help you to improve certain things. So if you're important about research, you want to get to understand it, please try to give it a bit of time, give some thoughts, so that you can help the next person when those treatments are licensed. Thank you.
Spot on. I think, Dr. Susan, we might need to do one more on our health. Yes, very soon, right?
Oh, throughout the year, we will look at, and I think it will also be good, Papa, for you to ask your audience, your listeners, and your viewers what they want to hear about. Whether it relates to child health or it relates to adult health, because I can get the specialist on your show. We're very, very passionate, as you know, as part of one-to-one, to engage in some of these discussions, because at the end of the day, to contribute to the good of our community. And we just happen to be an organization that's just full of clinicians, and we have contacts to clinicians, whether they are in nursing, pharmacy, or medicine. So definitely, and I would also like to encourage people to go to the NHS website. We are so blessed to have an institution called the NHS. They have lots of information out there, lots of apps. Their diabetes website is amazing, and everything with hypertension. And then hypertension is one of the things that I'm very keen for us to talk about perhaps next time. And we can bring even Adam back, Mr. Adam back again. Adam, before we jump off, can you kindly tell us about your Abalone Trust?
Sure.
If it's basically if it's relevant, I just thought it would be
Sure.
an opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Susan. Thank you, Papa Smiley. So as part of the years of experience that I've had in ophthalmology, I've worked in ophthalmology for 18 good years. I've involved with clinical management research and all that. I thought about giving back to my community. So giving back in form of the communities that I'm associated with, and formed a charity co-founded with my colleagues, and some of my colleagues are from Eye Health, Eye Care that I've worked with. But the motivation, the inspiration for all this is because of the service that I'd offered at Moorfields. And some of my colleagues came up to me and said, look, if you set up a charity, would help you, would want to support eye care in Africa. So the charity name is called Abalone Trust. It's a UK registered charity with the Charity Commission. We are focused on international eye health. We have done some work in Zimbabwe. We've done some work in Kenya, and we are currently also doing some work in Barbados. So we see ourselves as the kind of Commonwealth eye charity on international sort of flavor strategically. And our vision is based on threefold. We are so much passionate about eye care. Why eye care? Because we believe that people's sight matters, right? Gone are the days when someone can be on a death sentence because they cannot get the treatment that they need, like cataract surgery extraction. It cannot be like that in a modern century. So we are committed to eye care. We are also committed to clinical research and innovation. The smartphones that Papa Smiley again mentioned, that we spend so much time on our phones, that can also be used as an innovation in raising eye health, eye awareness, and clinical appointments. But we're also thinking about telemedicine, teleophthalmology in some of the countries. And the last thing is about training and education, similar to what we have. Education is powerful and information is power. So we've trained some nurses in Africa. We've worked with some nurses in Ghana. We've also worked with some nurses in Malawi and Kenya to try to boost clinical care, especially in the rural communities for the underserved, underprivileged. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you. I think you also have a lot on your plate. You are a very good match for each other. I think our time is fast spent. So
Yeah.
I'll thank Dr. Susan and Adam Mapani, right, from Zimbabwe,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Excellent. I'll thank you wonderful too for making time to talk to us about our health. Very, very important. And as I said, we have to come back on our health very soon.
Yes. So, Papa, I will talk to Adam, and we might look at. I mean, I'm not promising, but the next talk could be around hypertension. Because a lot of these chronic conditions can cause it, apart from being born with it as well. So I'll speak to Adam, and then we can look and see how we can support that. Yeah, but it's not a promise.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, and enjoy your week.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.